And so what happened was CO gets created because I'm running tournaments. Somebody cancels it. It's a big history story. Everyone knows that some guy canceled the event within 3 weeks. I had already been doing like maybe 12, 13 monthlies on my own under like Jebailey Presents before CO is a word. Cancels the event called Game in Florida in 2010. And then, I'm like, well, I don't have money to go create a major. I've never done this before. And a Smash TO Plank, who's no longer around, he did Pound. In the Mid-East, Jesus, Maryland area. He's like, hey, I found a venue. It's like $3,000. I'm like, I go to my dad. I'm like, hey, can I borrow some money to do this event? We might make like $1,000 back. He's like, yeah, sure. So luckily, because my dad, he did that. Plank ran the Smash side. This is when I first met Hungrybox, when, still the guy that he is today. They ran Smash. I ran FGC, which was Street Fighter 4. With like 128 entrants. I ran literally the brackets by myself, helped the stream by myself with the streamer JT, who actually still does all the music entrances for CO. He plays the songs, he gathers them from the top eights.
Right.
So we're still good friends. And then we had like 1,000 people watching that when I had the CO gaming stream. It was like Street Fighter 4, Blaze Blue, Chrono Phantasma, Tekken 6. And then we had like 2 arcade cabinets with like CVS 2 and Third Strike that people were just on nonstop. And those pictures all over the internet. But it was like, I did that. And then 2011, I'm like, let's go bigger. We got Tokido Gamerby, right? And then the following year, it just, Daigo came on his own. So I had set goals. First year was just do a fun event, play Street Fighter 4, where I got bodied by 2 guys who have never beaten me since because somebody stole my phone right before the matches. And I didn't have a phone until the next morning. And I was very pissed off. Like Flash Metroid won that. We were always like going up against each other in finals. And then it was just a fun event. And then I'm like, you know what? That was 3 weeks. Let me see how I can do, talk to hotels. And I had an anime con at the Wyndham, which just shut down. And for my second year of CO, the first time we were at Wyndham. And they're like, hey, you seem passionate. We get a lot of people here, saying they want to do a big convention, but they don't have like it wasn't experience, but she just knew I knew what I was talking about. Right. And I had to learn about stuff. And then we did that with 900 people. And then, fast forward 2019, 11,000 because of the AEW and all that. And now we average about, 4,500 to 5,000. CO back in Orlando after 5 years in Daytona is going to crush all those numbers, which I'm really happy about. It's like, I've gone up and down my career with CO itself with like negativity about Florida and like, haha, suckers, it's the whole country now, stuff like that. So, and that really hurt. Like community itself can hurt its own community by, telling everyone else something that isn't true or, stuff. But I don't want to dive into that because I'm still a very positive outlooking person and we're back to where we need to be. I need to make up for a few years of Daytona. But anyways, so 2012, the first year, do a good event. 2011, get 2 big names. And it was, Mike Ross and Gutex, when they were doing cross counter, they promoted, I just paid them for like flights to come out. I didn't want to spend money. I wanted to grow my event organically. I didn't want to go get celebrities and all that until down the road.
Right.
And then once Capcom Pro Tour was the thing, Daigo came out on his own, back then where he had an agency, kind of flying him out for a cost, but he came out on his own. And I'll never forget the moment he landed, I was a huge fan and still a huge fan today. And every time we see each other, I love the fact that I'll tell you another story in a minute, but he came, as soon as he got off, he was so tired and he, Gamerby was translating. And he's like, hey, he's really hungry. I'm like, does he want pizza? He goes, yeah. So he takes 2 boxes of pizza, goes to his room and like eats it and just passes out. And we don't see him till the next morning ready to play.
Man.
But it was really cool to have him come out and then the event just grow and grow. And before like Combo Breaker came around, UFGT, Keats was my first big mentor. Me, Keats, Adam Hart, who works at Iron Galaxy, who got me in Dive Kick and who helped me get a job on Killer Instinct. We were talking on AIM Instant Messenger every day about how to run good tournaments. So I learned a lot from going to Chicago. And then me and Rick became really close. We still literally talk almost every single day about just everything as a whole, as friends and family and, tournaments. And Adam taught us everything. Then obviously he passed on to Rick. But UFGT was just a big local thing. Then Rick took it to the next level. And before that happened, it was like 2011, 2012, people would be like in my ear, like, dude, you could be the next Evo. Like, you're going to be as big as Evo one day because it was always Evo than everywhere else. Final round could have been up there, right, over the years. And it was huge
back in the day. Yes.
Yeah. And then, my history with that, we won't dive into that. But like times were changing in terms of quality events and everyone just social media is coming out. So now you'd hear more about people's experiences, good or bad. And that would kind of motivate people to go places. And everyone's like, dude, CO's incredible. It's so much fun. You got to go to CO. And so it was at a point like 2012, Evo's inviting me to their suite, you know, Mr. Wizard back then, and the Cannon's like, hey, your event's doing really well. It was almost like they were happy somebody else was creating something that they felt could be as successful as them, and to kind of partner up. And that's when Road to Evo started.
Yeah, that's right.
And then politics came into play and that stopped, but luckily we had the Pro Tours, because again, we just wanted these companies to recognize us and use us to give the players more opportunities. And now look how big Capcom Pro Tour is, right?
Yeah.
So me and Rick kind of built our ideas and grew from that. Combo Breaker's a huge, you know, back then, I always tell people this like historical geographic story. It was California, New York, Texas, like Texas Showdown, Javi and all that, right?
Yeah.
That was it. There was no Florida scene. There was no like Northwest scene. You know, it was all SoCal, NorCal. That now, like Midwest is number one, man, between Frosties and in terms of like offline competition and people traveling to their regionals and stuff. And then New York is still kind of there thanks to Spooky, right? And everything they created. Texas is still there. California, unfortunately, like God bless Vi and them, it's so expensive. I've done events out there with Dreamhack San Diego. It's a racket. So we'll get into that about internet and venue stuff. But so what happened with Dreamhack? You know, I always knew of Dreamhack on the, you know, it was esports. I was never an esports guy. I never watched StarCraft. I played it. I play almost every game. Like I still play Call of Duty. Now they added the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in there for $20 a pop. Jesus Christ.
Man, they're in everything.
But I got Donatello and he's so worth it. But you know, so guy. What happened was Dreamhack had its first event ever. And after college, I worked a family business. I meant to finish that story of selling Disney World tickets. My dad owned a hotel in the 80s when he moved here and sold Disney tickets. So for 13 years after college, I worked with the family business because I couldn't get a job. So I had to go through a visa process through the family business, you know, then turn into a green card and all that stuff, right? 2014 comes, I have my, you know, my work visa. I'm good to go anywhere I want. Iron Galaxy is a thing with a Killer Instinct contract. And Dive Kick had already been out for 2 years. So I had Dave Lang. You know, what happened was I was very close with the Iron Galaxy crew, and thanks to Keats and putting me in Dive Kick, right? And then I think what happened was they took me to PAX when I was in Dive Kick and had like Beat the Pro. And Dave Lang's like, for everyone you lose, I'm going to deduct your paycheck or something funny. And I think, and everyone got a free poster. I lost to like 3 out of 65 people.
That's good enough.
Just because of that. Again, it was like my father challenging me, right? And he remembered that how good I was with people coming up to the booth and talking, and just I have a personality. We all know this. 2014 comes. Dave Lang goes, hey, would you like to come out to lunch with me and someone else from the company? I go, sure. We sit down. He goes, hey, Alex, we're about to get the Killer Instinct contract from Microsoft, right? And this is when community management was such an important role to all these companies. Like, you need someone to check the emails, gather the feedback, you know, save the directors and stuff time for meeting everything and just give them the important stuff. And Dave's like, hey, we're getting Killer Instinct. Would you be interested in working with us as community manager? Because your name is always the first one that comes up at that everyone that knows you.
Nice,
and I'm in Orlando and they just had an office. So gives me that opportunity. I'm there for like 2 years. They send me to Tokyo Game Show to show Dive Kick. For the first time on the Square Enix stage, which that's when that was my peak. That was when I sat there. I go, I'm a character in a video game, flown to Japan to talk about said video game while playing with the crowd. Like, it doesn't get better than that. And that's where I was like, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life, is just be in the industry and work. And 2 years later, Killer Instinct's like going into season 3. This Avid Gaming company comes out of nowhere, if you guys remember. It was supposed to be like a betting website, like MLG Game Battles from back in the day.
I think
and
I
like,
do,
hey, we got this huge investment money, like millions of dollars. We're building out an office, which they did in Orlando, right in downtown. Beautiful. An office that was almost like, how did you afford this type of thing? Right. It was coming from some big Call of Duty backer. And we're there, and they literally go, hey, Alex, we want to hire you. They sponsored Combo Breaker. They sponsored CEO. Like, you're in Orlando. We'd like to hire you to do events for us. And then even Capcom came out and toured their office before CEO, you know, the people that were there at the time. And just to talk about like, hey, we'd like to do a World Finals, all this stuff. And they're like, hey, we want you to work here full time and leave the other job. I'm like, I'm really happy at our Galaxy. And I was. And they're like, what would it take to get you here? And I threw out a number and they're like, here's the check. I'm like, fuck.
What? Okay.
Yeah. So I took the money. It wasn't like million. It wasn't crazy, but it was good.
Yeah.
But I also felt like I was getting at a time where CEO is growing and it might be time to put all my life into events. So I take that job. We sit in an office for 6 months. I have to put out the tweet almost every fucking day. Coming soon, coming soon, coming soon, which became a meme.
Yeah.
Right.
And they had a real team. They were working. Everything was ready to go, but they just couldn't cross the finish line of an actual product. And I go, hey, I'm like, my 6-month contract's about to end. You don't have anything yet. This is really hurting my reputation because I'm the only one in this company that everyone knows because we're focusing on fighting games first. So if nothing's out at that 6 month, I'm putting in my 2 weeks. I put in my 2 weeks, right? At that time, between the Iron Galaxy job and the Avid Gaming job, I had like 2 weeks off. Gaming Generations, who you know supplies equipment to every major event, and they helped CEO since 2012, thanks to Rick in the Midwest and Focus Fire and stuff like that. And what happened was Evan's like, hey, we're going to be at Dreamhack Austin, which was their first US Dreamhack ever, right? They were expanding into America. Can you come out and admin Pokken tournament for Pokemon? So it was a tournament. It was a part of like the Pokemon series at the time for Pokken, right? And I go, sure. So I went out there and then I literally got introduced to everyone at Dreamhacks and they all knew who I was from fighting games. Like, hey, they did Smash as well. They did like a Street Fighter area and they had people that could run that stuff, but they didn't have a name attached. And so they're like, hey, you know, we would love to work with you in the future, you know, help us build up fighting games. We know you do CEO. And at the time, it was really just CEO, Evo, final round, like, you know, the NEC Big East series. And that was it. And then SoCal regions, all those popped up. And now a lot of those events are gone, unfortunately. So they're like, hey, keep in touch. I'm like, sure. So I get the Avid job. This was like October and then May was that Dreamhack. The day I leave that job, at the time, Event Hubs is always writing about me. Shuriken's like Yahoo had that Esports with Mike Martin, which is a great, you know, source.
Yeah, I remember that.
News. Yeah. And I was in every article like Jebailey's leaving this guy, Jebailey's going there. I was almost everywhere too much.
Celebrity.
And the article goes out. Jebailey's leaving Avid Gaming. I shit you not. The very next day, Dreamhack. His name's Mike. He still works there in Sweden. He goes, hey, we see you're out of a job. What do you plan to do? I'm like, I don't know yet, you know? He's like, would you like to work for us part-time and consult and do fighting game turns? Like, I'll take it. So first year, not a lot of pay. It was worth each event at the time, obviously, but it wasn't like year-round work. It was organize the event. You know, I could still do CEO. And then the first year of that contract, I was in Sweden for Dreamhack Winter. They go, hey, we want you full-time. Here's the offer. I go, I happily accept. I've been a Dreamhack ever since, and things have changed drastically. You know, we've done, but the fact that Dreamhack, it wasn't CEO, it was Dreamhack that sent me to like, I got to do Dreamhack Korea, you know, Dreamhack Rotterdam, Dreamhack Sweden like 9 times, you know, so going worldwide everywhere. Dreamhack Melbourne, I got to go for Pokken. So that's when I was like, this is my job. I'm, you know, COVID, they kept me around. I was doing like online interview content with some celebrities through them with Regan, who's no longer at the company. And so I was just always a part of that Dreamhack team as like one of the main, you knew I was at a Dreamhack. I've been to like 32 now. You know, like 30 of them I've worked in some capacity. And so, yeah, that was just the Dreamhack lore and I'm still there. And then last year, hey, Esports World Cup is a thing, you know, the second year of Gamers 8, you know, are you interested in moving on to this team? I go, you know, what are the details? What's the workload? Boy, it's a workload, my friend. I'll tell you that. It's a huge project in Saudi Arabia and I'm Middle Eastern Lebanese. So I just think, you know, supporting my background, being out there, I've been there. I had an incredible time. You know, the times are changing, you know, the newer generation Prince and everything is like, he's a gamer, man. He's like a gamer with all the money in the world.
I've heard, I've heard stories about him. I think he has like he knows he has a blood build in Elden Ring and like all these kinds of.
He's like a true gamer.
One of them was there. One of the other princes was there watching Street Fighter while watching Fortnite in the other arena on his iPad. Like that's how like in tune.
Multitasking in the viewership mode. Okay.
So, and I think it was because he does the awards as well. So he had to know when one thing was finishing Jump Around. But I talked to him for a few minutes. He's like, what, you know, just really cool experience. And so I've been on that team, you know, but I still.